I just did a little bit of writing. I'm going to share with you a couple of ideas came to mind. They're not necessarily all that happy, but I figured why not put them out there. Perhaps they'll resonate with others. Not that it will make much of a difference. And you'll understand why I feel this way after I discuss some of these ideas. The last month and a bit have been really hard. I most likely had COVID and it sapped me of my energy. So even though I was engaged in cycling and maintaining a relatively healthy type of lifestyle, engaging in healthy activities, I wasn't able to keep that up. I was barely able to continue working. Towards the afternoons, I would just feel like I needed to collapse. But I have drive and I have willpower, so I kept pushing myself. Of course, I needed to make the money, right? There's always a need to make money, especially when I'm still in the process of finishing this house. So on Sunday, I went for a bike ride. It was then that I felt like, okay, it's a turning point. I felt like I was on a mental and physical upswing. This morning, I realized that was just a temporary reprieve. Depression, for lack of a better word, just had a hold of me again. I woke up with a headache, I had no energy, and I certainly had no motivation to pursue anything that was mentally demanding. And I believe that it was because I got the vaccine booster shot yesterday. The nurse told me that I would have some symptoms. It just wasn't very convenient for me to crash once again so soon after the illness and so soon after the disastrous Christmas and the disastrous New Year's. I disappointed Lisa. I wasn't able to get into the mood of things. I really didn't see the purpose of engaging in what I consider to be some superstitious ritual of wishing each other a happy new year. This seems trite, it seems naive, it seems misguided, it just seems absurd. We don't know if it's going to be a good year. Yes, there'll be some things that will be less harmful than others that will happen to us, but good is very subjective. It could be good for some to have a girlfriend. It could be good for others to be alone and to develop themselves without the influence of somebody else's presence. There's really no point in reliving past mistakes, so I don't talk to people mostly. I just stay away. I tried the friendship thing, going to people's homes, going out, talking, walking, but for the most part, I just dominate the conversations. I just use people like sounding boards. They are all my Watsons. I consequently have a very isolated life, especially given that I live here in the country. I find that the city diminishes me in some way. When I'm in the city, I'm relegated to a smaller living space as opposed to 3,000 square feet, much of which I don't use, much of which was built for my family, which hardly ever comes here because it's so far out of the way. I always feel like I have to be looking around to make certain that I'm not bothering other people. If I'm at a cash, I have to gather my things quickly. If I'm parking, I have to do so quickly. If I'm walking my dog, I have to pick up the poo quickly before somebody reproaches me. If I listen to my music, the police, they're called on me. So it just doesn't seem to ever end unless I become a completely withdrawn, silent, introverted type. There's always somebody who I will bother. There's a lot to be said for isolation. About 2 months ago, I was mugged in a park. I was filming an outdoor concert and some street person, an elderly man, probably in his late 50s or early 60s, told me to stop filming. He saw his face in the screen. I told him that I wasn't filming him, and he immediately turned to his group of friends and claimed that I was. This park is known for having people who are high on crack or high on oxy. It's just a really degenerate park. It's extremely dangerous. I didn't think that I was necessarily endangering myself because I was still on the sidewalk. But at this point, when this man made the claim, a girl jumped up on a bench, a cement bench, and she just howled and screamed savagely. And she pushed my bike to the ground. My backpack was there with my wallet and my ID. And the old man picked up a beer bottle and he hit me with it. And then somebody else picked up a bar and they struck my forearm with it. And as I was trying to keep these people at bay with my bike in between, I picked up my bike at this point, and I was trying to keep it between me and them. As I backed away, they formed a semicircle in front of me. Some dude came up behind me and pulled my phone out of my back pocket, and then he fucking sprinted. He just was out of there so quickly. I couldn't chase him because I was still paying very close attention to what this tiny mob of about half a dozen street people were doing. That was not a good scene. I once thought that I was capable at getting out of these types of situations, but I'm no longer that arrogant. I no longer think that such things can happen to me. We're just very powerless towards so many things. And every day that I manage to wake up and walk on this precious planet that I feel our species is treating like a toilet bowl, I regard it as a miracle. There's so many ways in which things can go wrong. And even though I feel like today's a big lottery win, I also feel like I'm a quadriplegic and I can't do anything to benefit from that win. So it makes very little difference. And because of this knowledge, my depression worsens. I sometimes delude myself into believing that if I had followed some other course, my life would be filled with friends and family and perpetual laughter, but somehow it's on me. I messed up the recipe. But if I think on it, and I don't have to think on it very hard, I realized that the ingredients I was given were rotten. And so I've had to create my own recipes through trial and error. And there's been multiple errors. And so as things are now, after 51 years of walking on this planet, I am now an anxious, cynical, judgmental man who feels excited by very little. I did enjoy engaging with others once, but really doesn't even feel like it was me at all. So in that way, I guess that part of me is dead. I once believed that life was purposeful, but then I just keep seeing behaviors repeating themselves, same patterns. Now there's less time ahead than behind, and I just can't wrap my head around that. I can't be okay with it. Sometimes I encounter an old person and it's just a shocking reminder of what's coming. And then I wind up resenting that old person. I'm like, why can't you just stay home? I did promise myself, though, that I would see this through to the end, despite the fear. And even though I am ironically sharing these thoughts and these feelings, I don't think that sharing these stories will prevent other episodes from occurring. But what else am I going to do? Nothing. Existence, for me at least, is a perpetual trepidation. I do engage in routines. They offer some comfort, the illusion of time remaining still, of things not changing. But as the Stoics say, if it weren't for change, there wouldn't be these experiences that I've had. But what's to say that those experiences won't be ripped away from me? Once there were kids, there were outings, there were suppers to be made, bedtimes to prepare for. And now there's just emptiness, loneliness, and I'm accompanied by a dying dog whose life I have to schedule an end to, and whose urine I clean up every day because he's incontinent. And you know what, man? Even though I go out and I see people, even though our entire planet closed down, and I was hoping that some message would be pounded into our collective consciousness that we needed to drastically change our behaviors, even though we were reminded of how precarious everything is, nothing really changed. The crazies became more visible, the radicals became louder, and outrageous conspiracies were believed by far too many people. Shopping online and the sales of alcohol soared. Just goes to reveal our true objectives, I guess. And in this way, we continue manufacturing obliviousness. Perhaps this is the apex of our evolution. Maybe this is as good as it gets. We have the same wars, we have the same abuses, same desires, hopes, dreams, and the lessons, if any, are lost on a vain, insecure species that prioritizes the immediate over the long term. Even when faced with an apocalypse, we fail to rise to the occasion, falling back on the same habits that got us here. Everything is predictable, forgotten, press reset, and speed run through life. So I'm going to finish up with a poem that I wrote yesterday. I wrote it in response to a song by John Prine called Hello in There, which I felt was reductionist and naive, preachy, whatever.
Alas, praying to a different god, salvation in a screen. A mind released to being, orbits reflecting despair. Behold known strangers. Failure was inevitable.